I'm going to spend over 100 hours building in Minecraft to see if putting in the time is really worth it. First, we found a nice place that we can use for our 3 builds using the same idea, built in 1 hour, 10 hours, and 100 hours. So, jumping right into the 1 hour build, we are trying our best to make the most of the time and set a nice reference for the other builds to follow, so that the content of each build remains conceptually similar. I set out with the intention to make a mountainside settlement with an icy river and an ancient dragon protector. It's a tall ask for only having 1 hour, but I scrambled to achieve what I had envisioned. As you can see, we're nearing the halfway point and we still had a lot to do to meet expectations. Despite feeling anxious about the potential disappointment to come, we pushed through trying to get something built that resembled a dragon, which honestly didn't go very well. Trying to make something organic in just an hour on top of the rest of the plan was just maybe a bit too ambitious, but we proceeded to try and make the most of the time we had left and add a few more structures, before realizing that I completely forgot that I had wanted to add a forest surrounding the settlement. So with only seconds left, I rushed to add as many trees as I could muster.
Oh my god, we only have 5 seconds left, okay. Well, that's the end. Can't place any more blocks.
Looking around at the finished build, we did actually manage to get a lot of what we wanted into the build. The river, some towers to live in, a dragon, and even a small forest. But overall, it's just lacking refinement and detail. The tower isn't finished, the forest is tiny, and if I didn't tell you that this was supposed to be a dragon, what would you think it was? Let me know down in the comments what you think it most resembles. And even with the disappointing result, at least we now have some kind of reference for the other builds to try and improve upon. With all that being said, let's get started with build 2 in 10 hours. Beginning again, hopeful that this time my idea would be realized, I decided, since I was still pretty nervous about tackling the dragon, having never done any sculptures in Minecraft previous to the last pathetic attempt, that I would begin with the dragon, so that I would have plenty of time to make it look awesome. And somehow, I ended up spending 4 whole hours on it, leaving me with only 6 hours remaining for the rest of the build. So feeling pretty rushed, I began on the river, starting in the mountains, running along the side of the raised plateau, and falling down behind the dragon and splitting it in 2 on the dragon's rock. After a while of finicking with the water to get it to flow nicely down into the bay, I was happy enough with how the river looked and began work on the main tower and a raised garden surrounding it. After that, I decided there needed to be some more life sprinkled about, so we added some farms and houses around the edge of the bay, which slowly but surely turned the barren landscape into a more rich environment. Noticing I only had about an hour remaining, I rushed to make the build look more complete, with a greenhouse, bell tower, windmill, paths, trees, houses, and an icy dragon breath.
I cannot believe how long those 10 hours felt. I am just so drained. I'm just ready to go home. But before that, let's quickly look at what we were able to accomplish in the 10 hours. And I'm not gonna lie, I think it looks incredible. I am so happy with how the dragon looks, and the main towers look great. Everything is so detailed and so pretty. I've got a feeling that the 100-hour build is either going to be so unimaginable or a complete waste of time. But I guess there's only one way to find out. Let's begin the 3rd and final build in 100 hours. This better not be a waste of my time. With 100 hours ahead of me, I figured I could do some serious background terraforming. So I began by creating some giant inverted icicle mountains as the birthplace of the ancient dragon protector, Nazildor. I think I ended up spending around the same amount of time making these mountains as I did on the entire last build. If I ever do any terraforming like this in the future, I will most certainly be learning how to use World Edit, as placing every little detail by hand was really time consuming and honestly pretty wearing. The mountains were looking pretty good at this point, so on the second day, I decided I would turn my attention over to the river, where I figured this time I could have the river start from multiple sources where the ice was melting off the side of the mountain, and have it coalesce into the main stream before getting to the waterfall section. We then did some brief terraforming of the farming district before we began work on the dragon Nazildor. And this time, in hopes of making it look better than the 10-hour dragon, we made the face a few blocks wider in order to accommodate more details. Not to mention, we added a gradient of blocks from top to bottom, enhancing the shadows and highlights. I also thought it would look really cool to add more ice into the dragon, to add contrast to what was a very white figure previously, which led to me making some gorgeous translucent ice wings. I opted to add some barbs along the back and tail of the dragon, just to add a little bit of a menacing look. One downside to the way the wings were
was that it was particularly difficult to match how they looked from one side to the other. But I pushed through the frustrations of completing the dragon before on day 4 beginning the main tower. This time opting to have separate spires to properly defend the central building. I began work on the lowest of the central towers initially, and I was really starting to love the way this build was looking by the time I finished it. I had planned to add 2 smaller towers surrounding the central structures, but as you see, I ended up building a 3rd large turret. By the time I started the main building, I was becoming so engrossed in the process, and my thoughts of potentially wasting my time quickly faded as I became more and more optimistic about the potential prospects of the completed 100-hour build. After completing the tower, my attention was turned to adding a small power-generating water mill to the river, which I think ended up actually adding a little bit of realism and just looking so good. I also added in a little arch bridge so people could actually make their way up to the tower from the town. From there, I decided I'd go and finish off the base for the dragon, which would eventually become an ice cave underneath. Not to mention the rivers needed connecting from the waterfall into the bay. And we added some trees and some more foliage around the base, before on day 6 beginning work on the harbor. I know we didn't have a harbor on either of the other builds, but there's just such a nice natural harbor in that bay that it had to be done. And so we decorated that with a cute little market and began work on a medieval era ship. Before this, I'd never built a ship like that at all, so it was pretty challenging for me. However, it turned out really well, and we were able to make another cute little boat before turning our attention over to working on the farming area. I wanted the windmill to be pretty prominent, as in our last build it was kind of small. And we also got to add a cute little magical stump before finishing off the rest of the farming area with a sheep farm, some wheat farms, and some flower fields. We are just over halfway now, and there's still so much I want to add, but all this building has taken a really long time. And this project has taken me over a month in total. So if you're enjoying it, please go on down, hit the like button and the subscribe button if you want to see more. And if you don't, I'm going to have to kill this donkey. At the start of day 7, we started work on a church, which was looking really cool, and I'm kind of sad I didn't add one in the previous versions. And then we did sort of a twist on the bell tower. We combined the bell tower that we had before with a clock tower, which just looks absolutely brilliant. From that point, I spent some time trying to figure out how people would actually get from the harbor up to the upper part of the city, whilst along the way adding some more homes, and we worked on what would later be the entrance to the bank. It also ends up with one of the nicest interiors of the town. Then we added some more trees in a house, and began working on a lighthouse. I figured if we were going to have big ships in our harbor, we better make sure on a foggy night they wouldn't crash into the coast. If you have an astute eye, you may have already been able to tell, but I'm trying to make the lower down you go to the water more of a poorer and poorer area. So the higher you go up into the mountains, the more expensive it would be to live there. And speaking of high up into the mountains, we're working on the final tower of the upper echelon district. You may have seen that frequently, instead of fully terraforming an area, I've just added stone into the more steep parts of the dirt. And that's a technique you can bring into your own survival world just to add a lot more contrast to a hill that's particularly steep. I could sit here and describe absolutely everything that's happening, but I think from this point out I'll just let the time lapse do the talking, and I'll catch you back at the end.
We did it. The 100 hours is officially over. Done with. And I could not be more happy. It looks so good. I remember thinking back to the 10-hour build. I'm like, there's no way it can get that much better. I was wrong. It looks insane. And I'm so excited to see the comparisons between the different builds.
Here is the 1 hour, and it is just so sad in comparison to the other two. It is definitely not the winner. Here is the 10-hour one, and I actually quite like this one. It's pretty quaint. It's obviously not as filled out as the other one, but I think this one could be in the running for potentially being like an optimal time to build at. And now, let's take a look at the 100-hour glory shots to make our final decision.
So overall, to me, I think it's pretty clear that time pays off. Every minute you put into it, you can really tell the difference. To be fair though, the 10-hour one I think is pretty reasonably good looking. And if you were going to build something that didn't need to be absolutely perfect, then I think you could get away with spending less than 100 hours on, on a build or a project. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy your day.